The massive stage of America's Got Talent glowed under thousands of dazzling lights. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as the audience settled into their seats. Cameras rolled. Producers whispered into headsets. The iconic AGT music echoed through the theater. Backstage, standing in the shadows, was a thin village boy no older than 14. His hands were trembling. He had never seen lights this bright before. He had never stood on a stage this big. He had never been this far away from home. His clothes were simple, neatly washed but clearly old. His shoes had small cracks on the sides. In his pocket he carried something small, a folded photograph of his mother standing outside their broken wooden house. A stage assistant gently touched his shoulder. "You're up next." He swallowed hard. The announcer's voice filled the theater. "Please welcome a young singer all the way from a small village." The curtains slowly opened. The audience clapped politely as the boy stepped onto the stage. The lights hit his eyes, forcing him to blink several times. For a brief second, he looked lost, like a child standing in the middle of a world too big for him. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, calm and observant. Next to him, Sofia Vergara smiled warmly. Heidi Klum leaned forward with curiosity, while Howie Mandel tilted his head, studying the boy carefully. The theater slowly grew quiet. The boy reached the microphone stand. His fingers wrapped around it tightly, so tightly his knuckles turned white. Simon spoke first. "Hello, what's your name?" His voice came out soft, slightly shaky. "My name is Daniel, sir." "And where are you from?" Simon asked. "From a small village, very far away." The audience chuckled gently at his nervous honesty. Simon leaned forward. "And why did you decide to come here today?" Daniel paused. His eyes dropped to the floor. For a moment it looked like he might cry before even singing. Then he spoke. "I came here because my mother works every day in the fields. Our house is broken when it rains. Sometimes we don't have enough food. I can't give her money. I can't give her comfort. But I can sing." The room went completely silent. No background noise, no whispers, just silence. "And even if my voice is broken," he continued softly, "maybe it can still be heard." The camera zoomed into the judges. Sophia's eyes were already glossy. Heidi placed her hand over her heart. Howie nodded slowly. Simon's expression changed from neutral to deeply attentive. "All right," Simon said gently, "whenever you're ready." The music began. It was soft at first, a simple piano melody floating through the air. Daniel closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, and he sang. The first note cracked, a small, fragile crack that revealed his nerves. A few people in the audience shifted slightly in their seats. Daniel's hands trembled. But he didn't stop. He continued. His second line came out stronger, not perfect but honest. There was pain in his tone, real pain, the kind that cannot be practiced, the kind that comes from living through storms without shelter. As he sang, memories filled his mind, his mother stitching his torn school uniform at night, rain leaking through their roof, walking miles barefoot to attend school, singing quietly to himself while working in the fields. His voice shook again, but this time it carried something powerful. Truth. The theater began to feel different. The audience stopped judging the cracks. They started feeling the story. The piano grew slightly louder. Strings joined in softly. The atmosphere shifted from nervous to emotional. Daniel opened his eyes for a brief second and looked out at the sea of faces. Instead of fear, he saw something else. Understanding. He sang the next line with more strength. His broken voice carried a texture no trained singer could imitate. It wasn't polished. It wasn't studio perfect. It was human. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table. Sophia wiped the corner of her eye. Heidi whispered, "Wow." Howie mouthed the words along, already connected. Daniel reached the chorus. His voice trembled again. But this time it wasn't weakness. It was emotion overflowing. The crack in his voice made the lyric hit harder, stronger, realer. The audience began to clap softly in rhythm. Some stood, some cried. A close-up camera caught a woman in the front row wiping tears from her face. Daniel's breathing became steadier. Confidence slowly replaced fear. For the first time since stepping onto that stage, he wasn't thinking about the lights. He wasn't thinking about the judges. He wasn't thinking about winning. He was thinking about his mother, and he sang for her. Every note now carried hope. The once nervous boy standing alone on a giant stage was transforming into something else, a storyteller, a fighter, a voice for every child who ever felt unseen. As the verse ended, the theater was no longer just watching. They were feeling. Simon exchanged a glance with the other judges. It was no longer about technical perfection. It was about heart. Daniel approached the final line of the first verse. His voice softened. Then it rose gently, cracked once more, and landed beautifully. Not flawless, but unforgettable. The music paused for a split second, and the audience erupted into applause. Daniel opened his eyes fully now. He looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe the reaction. His chest rose and fell heavily as he tried to steady his breathing. Simon nodded slowly, still silent. The moment felt bigger than just an audition. It felt like the beginning of something life-changing. The once broken voice had filled one of the biggest stages in the world, and scene one ended not with perfection, but with possibility. The applause from the first verse slowly faded, but the energy inside the auditorium of America's Got Talent had completely changed. What began as a nervous audition was now something far deeper. Daniel stood at the center of the stage, breathing heavily. The bright lights no longer felt blinding. The massive theater no longer felt frightening. For the first time since walking out, he felt heard. The piano began again, softer this time. A single spotlight narrowed around him. The world outside that circle of light disappeared. He closed his eyes once more, and this time, when he sang, there was no hesitation. There was only truth. His voice trembled, not from fear, but from emotion rising from somewhere deep inside. Every lyric now carried the weight of his life. The cracked tone that once sounded fragile now sounded powerful, like a scar that tells a story instead of hiding it. In the judges' panel, Simon Cowell leaned forward, elbows on the desk, fingers pressed together under his chin. He wasn't looking for perfection anymore. He was listening for something real. Next to him, Sofia Vergara pressed her hand to her chest. Her eyes shimmered under the lights. She whispered softly, "Oh my God." Heidi Klum blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. Howie Mandel slowly shook his head in disbelief, mouthing, "Wow." Daniel moved into the second verse. The orchestra quietly joined the piano, gentle strings swelling underneath his voice like a heartbeat. His mind drifted far away from the stage. He saw his village. He saw dusty roads and children running barefoot. He saw his mother bending over in the fields under the hot sun. He remembered nights when rain poured through the broken roof, and they had to place buckets around the room. He remembered singing softly to distract her from worry. And now, he was singing on one of the biggest stages in the world. His voice cracked again on a higher note, a raw, imperfect crack. The audience didn't react negatively. Instead, a woman in the front row covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks, because that crack didn't sound weak. It sounded human. Daniel's hands were no longer shaking. He lifted one hand from the microphone stand, placing it against his heart as he sang the next line. The music grew stronger. The strings rose higher. His voice followed. It wasn't loud in a powerful show-off way. It was loud in an emotional way, like someone finally letting years of silence escape. The theater was silent except for his voice. No coughs, no whispers, just breathless attention. The camera cut to Simon again. His expression had changed completely. The famous serious judge now looked deeply moved. His eyes were locked on the boy as if trying to understand how someone so young could carry so much emotion. Daniel approached the chorus again. This time, he didn't hold back. He took a deep breath. And he sang. The notes soared higher than before, shaking slightly at the top but filled with soul. The crack in his voice returned, but instead of breaking the moment, it made it explode with feeling. The audience stood up, one by one. Like dominoes, a standing ovation, before the song even finished. Sophia wiped tears openly now. Heidi was smiling through tears. Howie clapped softly while still seated, eyes wide. Simon didn't clap yet, he was still listening. Daniel moved into the bridge, the quietest part of the song. The orchestra faded. Only piano remained. His voice softened, barely above a whisper. But the softness carried even more weight. He sang about hope, about dreams bigger than fear, about believing when no one else does. His eyes slowly opened. For the first time he looked directly at the judges, and in that moment, it didn't feel like a competition. It felt like a conversation between a boy and the world. The final build began. The orchestra swelled dramatically now, strings, drums, and piano rising together like a wave. Daniel took one final breath. His chest lifted, his eyes closed tightly, and he delivered the final high note. It wasn't technically flawless. It wavered slightly. It cracked near the end. But it carried something far greater than perfection. It carried heart. The note echoed through the theater. Then silence. A half-second pause, and the room exploded. The audience screamed, cheered, clapped louder than before. Some were crying openly. Daniel lowered the microphone slowly. His breathing was heavy, his eyes filled with tears. He looked overwhelmed, unsure whether he should smile or cry. The judges stood, all four of them, a full standing ovation. Simon finally began clapping, slowly at first, then stronger. Daniel couldn't believe it. He covered his mouth with one hand. Tears streamed down his cheeks. The host ran onto the stage, smiling widely. That, the host said, was something special. The audience continued cheering. Daniel whispered softly to himself, "Thank you, Mama." The camera zoomed in on Simon. He leaned toward the microphone. "You know," Simon began, his voice calm but emotional, "sometimes we hear voices that are technically perfect. But today, we heard something real." The audience cheered again. Simon looked at the boy for a long moment. "You don't have a broken voice," he said gently. "You have a voice that carries truth." Daniel's knees nearly gave out. He held onto the microphone stand to stay steady. The energy in the room shifted once more. From applause to anticipation, everyone could feel it. Something big was about to happen. Simon slowly reached forward. His hand hovered near the golden button. The audience gasped. Daniel didn't notice yet. He was still wiping tears from his face. Sophia looked at Simon with wide eyes. Heidi smiled knowingly. Howie grinned. Simon glanced at Daniel one last time. Then, he pressed the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above. The theater erupted into chaos, screaming, cheering, clapping. Daniel jumped in shock as golden rain poured down around him. He looked up, stunned. Confetti stuck to his hair and shoulders. He dropped to his knees, crying openly now. The audience roared even louder. The judges laughed and clapped. Simon stood and smiled, a rare, proud smile. The once poor village boy with a broken voice now stood in a storm of gold, not because he was perfect, but because he was real. Scene 2 ended not with just applause, but with transformation, from doubt to belief, from broken to powerful, from unknown to unforgettable.